This is the Quip and Quill podcast. I'm your host, Devin Rue, professional fantasy cartographer and illustrator.
I'm Raphael Bocamazzo, better known as Dr. B for long Italian name reasons. And I am a clinical psychologist in Washington State. I am the clinical director at what is the first and what was at the time the only mental health nonprofit in the game industry, Take This at takethis.org. And I'm happy to say we're not the only game in town anymore, but we are the oldest. And I have been there for almost 8 years of its 10-year lifespan. Outside of that, I have a very quickly growing private practice in the Seattle area called SavePoint Behavioral Health, where we specialize in working with geeks and gamers. I now have a number of folks working for me to the point that I actually am going away from doing direct clinical work on a regular basis. I'm now just, off being a CEO, which I did not expect. Beyond that, I am a frequent consultant on both mental health representation and policy issues in the game industry, both on the tabletop RPG side and the video game side of the world, and consultant. And a frequent collaborator on the YouTube channel How to ADHD. I'm often behind the camera directing Jessica. Oh gosh, what else do I do? A lot of weird stuff. Right, I'm an author every now and then. I'm currently working on a book at the intersection of the psychology of Discworld and mental health for ETC Press. I do a lot of stuff. The running gag is I'm around, and I have probably the coolest, weirdest job of anybody I trained with. Yeah, and it's even better when you think of the fact that I started as training as a prison psychologist, and I thought I was going to end up working in the prison system exclusively, and then boy did my career take a left turn.
Tell us about this left turn. How on earth did you get to this part?
Well, okay,
Point?
So
yeah.
One of the things that really informs a lot of the advocacy and education, and even a lot of the consultation work that I do, is the fact that I'm very publicly both autistic and ADHD. Mm-hmm. And my ADHD makes me look at the world a certain way, but it also is a disability that really gets in my way periodically. And my career path is both the result and the victim of my undiagnosed ADHD at the time. Mm-hmm. I interviewed this was after my final internship, and I liked working at that prison. I loved working with the guys at the prison. The staff pissed me off on a regular basis because a lot of them were just there. A lot of them, it's a government stereotype, but it seemed to be true in a lot of cases that the people who were really, really good at their job very quickly got hired in the private sector at higher paying rates. And so a lot of the folks that were left over were there and just complacent. It was a union shop, and right. They were just complacent about getting a paycheck. And so subsequently the guys I worked with, they wanted help. And I enjoyed working with them, but God, the staff. But after my internship was over and all my training was over, I applied for a job at the prison. And there I was on the opposite side of the interview table that I was on 6 months prior, interviewing new students to come into the position. And across from me were 5 people, 4 of whom I was on a first name basis with, and I'd known for years, 1 of whom I'd never met before. And the first question on the list of questions that they laid out in front of me, which was a lovely accommodation they made for everybody, no surprise questions. The questions were just boom, right there in front of you.
Right. The
first question was, tell us about your training. And I was so perplexed by this because I just looked at all of them and the 80% of them that I knew, and I said, my training was you. And my former training director kind of took me aside and said, okay, pretend you don't know us. But, and here's where my autism really comes into play, because my autism went undetected for so long because it turns out that I have a real gift for pattern recognition and mimicry. And so I've gotten really good at social scripts over the years. But if you put me in a situation where I don't know the scripts, it's a new situation, I don't know what to do, the autism really comes out. And I have this unfortunate habit, gotten better, but I have this unfortunate habit of when I'm really anxious, and I am really anxious a lot, but when I'm really, really anxious, I try and compensate by acting confidently. And if I ever sound like an arrogant SOB, I am so anxious. And that's exactly what happened at this interview. I just tried to compensate so hard for how nervous I was that it turned into what one of my former supervisors lovingly called the Raphael show. And I did not get that job. It was so comically bad. I did not get that job. And so I had to figure out an alternate path for myself. I set up a little private practice after that, and I was trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do with my career? And somebody I trained with was asked to run this mental health support room for this fledgling nonprofit called Take This in 2014. It was the first AFK room at PAX West, then PAX Prime, and she said, it's a video game-based mental health nonprofit. Do you want to volunteer? And my response was, hell yes. How many shifts do you need? And I volunteered every day in the AFK room in 2014. And then when 2015 came along, it was the same thing. I volunteered every day because I am a huge nerd. I am a huge gamer. I have been a huge gamer my entire flippin' life. I still have the first 60 issues of Nintendo Power. The first issue is framed. I am one of those assholes who has had certain video game cartridges graded and, encased in lucite, because I found an amazing treasure at my mom's house about 5 years ago. She apparently bought me a second copy of NES Pinball from 1985 and forgot about it at the back of her closet until I found it still sealed.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, no, it's awesome. It was a 9.0 with a B+ seal. So excited. But anyway, yeah, so I volunteered for Take This in 2014, 2015. At the end of 2015, our first clinical director, my predecessor, Dr. Mark Klein, stepped back because he was managing a clinic in the northeast of the U.S. And he knew he had he had a kid going off to college, and he didn't have the time to devote to what Take This needed. And so they said, hey, we like you. You've been around. You speak nerd. You speak shrink. Do you want the job as clinical director? And I was floored, but I said yes. I didn't know what I was doing, but I said yes, because when was I going to be offered an opportunity like this again? So I just rolled with it. Right. And I have been with Take This for nearly 8 years since. It turned out to be my dream job. And I didn't know what was going to come of it. All I knew it was a small nonprofit. It was video games. It was mental health. I got to help my people, the video game community, the tabletop community. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Sign me up. Let's do this. And that just kind of launched it from there.
Were you already playing tabletop games at the time? D&D specifically, or not D&D specifically, but role-playing? Or did you get into it afterwards?
Oh, no. Since I was a teenager. I have a friend. When we were teenagers, he used to have these big birthday parties where all of our nerd friends would show up. And one year we got snowed in. Ended up being a 3-day birthday party, and his parents were so cool about this because none of us could leave. And he asked me, hey, do you want to play Star Wars? And I'm like, what are we for? And he's like, no, hold up. No, this is a role-playing game with dice and rules. And he's like, you can be a roadie, and you can be this, and you can be a Jedi. I'm like, I can be a Jedi? I'm sorry, what? Oh yeah, you can be a Jedi. I can be a Jedi.
You're 100% sure I can be a Jedi.
I'm in.
I'm amazed you even got that far after the original I can be a Jedi. You just didn't bolt right for whatever room it was being played in.
Yeah, well, and it was the old West End Games one, so there was just so many D6s were utilized, and there were these whenever I used a force point just right, and I could roll a brick of D6s to the point that he was like, don't even bother counting it. You just single-handedly destroyed a Star Destroyer. I'm like, yeah.
Oh.
But that
Suck it, Luke. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, what's up? Oh wait, no, that's the way. That's the path to the dark side. Um, but so that turned into D&D 3.0,
Mm-hmm.
which turned into D&D 3.5,
Yep.
which later turned into 4th edition, for which I am an apologist. I think it had some lovely features.
Yes.
It was a lot easier to bring new people into 4th edition D&D than it was 3.5, which was so crunchy.
Yes.
And then I kept playing role-playing games through my adulthood, and eventually they became part of my career.
Right. I'm going to state for the absolute record, please don't be an edition war person at all.
Nah.
There is great things about every edition that has ever come out. There's shitty things about all of them. If you love whatever edition you love, that is awesome. No hate to anyone else who likes something different than you.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. And that was an interesting thing to first encounter once I started going to conventions, because I didn't really have gatekeepery friends. They were just like, okay, you're into this thing, cool.
No, lucky you.
Well, I didn't. I kept it within some pretty small circles.
Right.
I was not, again, undiagnosed autistic. I didn't understand why I was uncomfortable around strangers and crowds at the time. I learned
Right.
later.
Well, I also started playing in the 80s, so I mean, it's a whole other. It was a whole other atmosphere back then. So.
Well, and also I'm a large white man. It's a very
Right.
different playing experience for me.
Yes, it is.
You know, I'm nearly 6'3", about 245. It's I have a very big, deep voice, and it's a different playing experience for me.
Yeah. No, I was, and to make it worse for me, I was a very, I was a LARPer, and I have a shit ton of confidence. I act like I cannot possibly fail anything. So most of my friends never even remotely thought that I would be playing Dungeons and Dragons, and so when it would ever come up and someone would find out, it was like, yeah, okay, really. And I'm like, no, really, I actually play the game. Like, what the fuck? And I'm a huge, huge gamer. I've been playing, because I'm old enough, since the original Nintendo. And,
Woot.
yeah. And, but yeah, back when girls don't game, I mean, we still get that now every once in a while, but it was really, really bad back then. So I love that now I can look at the tabletop industry the tabletop community, and it's vastly different.
Yeah.
Like
Thank God.
I'm super proud of our community, because the amount of, comparatively, when I was a teenager and started playing the games, to constantly have GMs take over my characters, tell me what my character is going to do, because I clearly couldn't understand how to play the game, because if you have a vagina, that affects your ability to understand how to read, I guess, or roll dice.
Well, the history of Western medicine certainly believes so.
Right. So, yeah, and right. And your characters only existed for someone else to save or romance. And the sad thing is, or I should say, the great thing is that I got introduced to the game by a bunch of adults who were both men and women in playing a group. They were in their 30s and 40s. So my very first experience was like, this is a game for everybody. Like, grown adults were fucking playing it. So of course, this is like the coolest fucking thing ever. So it wasn't until I started playing at conventions or at local game stores that I was confronted with this. Right.
Yeah. Well, okay. Now that I'm thinking about it, I actually kind of, excuse me, I put this at the back of my head. This is that I played Magic in the very early days
Mhm.
Not the earliest days, unfortunately. I came in around Revised and Fallen Empires, so my friends were the ones rocking the Power 9 and, Arabian Nights and Legends and all of that good stuff that was just obscene. And me as a, 13-year-old kid going into the game shops where adults who were at the time the age I am now and had the kind of disposable income they did, just
Right.
loved stomping on the 13-year-old kid with, oh, Chaos Orb, oh, mocks everything. And it put me off so much. I don't think I played a game at a gaming store for like 20 years after.
Right. I mean, I'm happy because it got me together. Playing the conventions and game stores got me the group that I'm with now, that I've been playing with for over 20 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But we did it because we constantly were being confronted with this kind of stereotype. And to specify, obviously, I highly doubt any such gatekeepers will be listening to this podcast, because most of them hate me anyhow, so that's fine.
Well, if they are listening, I hope your blood pressure is rising.
Right. By any means, you know what? I tell you what, if you want to become a patron of the show, you can bitch all you want, but otherwise, go fuck yourself.
At that point, I'm paid to listen.
Right. Well, no, not really. Like, I'll just delete it, but you'll be there might be a chance I read it. Doubt it. I'll just mute your ass after the first fucking comment. But hey, pie me, at least you can pay to bitch to me. That's fine. Right.
It's such a healthy perspective you have. I learned so much.
I have a lifetime of having really, really unusual jobs or circumstances, not technically even jobs, where I've been the minority. One of my early jobs, I started working for an efficiency management company. I was the youngest person they've ever hired. And I was one of the only female on several teams. So it was really difficult. So like I had to constantly what's the phrase? Like, work twice as hard to get paid half as much.
Yeah.
So from the get-go, I picked like one of the hardest occupations I could. I picked something where I really, really needed to have a ton of confidence in who I was and what I was doing and what I was saying. And not that I ever lacked for confidence in that regard. Even as a teenager, all my friends will tell you I have it in spades. But on top of it, I decided I was going to become an artist, and I was doing this on the weekends. And I have had such absolute scathing reviews written about my art publicly, that eventually you're just like, whatever. So you don't like it. Let's move on,
Well, that's, it's interesting. And this is something I try and communicate to folks who ask me about getting into the game industry. Mm-hmm. And like, what do I need to know? What do I do? And so forth. I was talking with somebody who I've known, again, for a long time from my neighborhood, and they're the child of some people I used to do theater with. They saw my name pop up in the credits of an actual play where I did some consultation, and they DM'd me going, oh my God, you were involved with that? And I was like, yeah, no, I forgot I was involved with that. Yeah, no, I absolutely did the thing. They were lovely people. They did a lot of really amazing groundwork. And, shout out to Brennan Lee Mulligan. He did so much groundwork for that.
By the way, if you're listening, hey, come be on my podcast, please. I do have to message him. I'm just absent-minded about it.
That was the first time I had ever interacted with him directly, and he was so pleasant, because I know you've encountered this as well, where you've done like sensitivity reads and so forth, where really the level people are at is like Inclusion 101.
Yeah.
And the basic definitions and so forth. When he consulted with both Dr. Kelly Dunlap and myself, Dr. Dunlap is the community director at Take This, it was clear he did his homework ahead of time. And we were all prepped to go into the 101 stuff.
Yeah.
But instead, he was like, okay, but I know this and this and this and this. And we're just like, oh, really? Okay.
We love you.
We get to have some fun now.
Right.
And so, serious shout out there. But my friend saw this, and she's, you know these people. I'm like, we've met,
Right.
which tends to happen if you're in the same industry long enough.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, you're the coolest person I know. I want to be in that industry. And I'm like, do you?
Oh.
Do you really?
No. No.
It's not what you think, and
Nope.
there's a lot of downsides to go with it. Well, how do I find success in this industry? Do something that people want and be willing to pound the pavement at convention 16 hours a day for 5 years?
Yes.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they'll send me free stuff, maybe. But that's not why you're doing it. If you just want free stuff, 5 years of 16-hour-a-day work is not a good payout.
Right. And I've been having these conversations with other people in the industry. We do mention and we do talk a lot about hustle culture because it is thriving in this industry. I also want to point out, excuse me, I do post that, like a perfect example is I do get freebies from other people in the industry. I do get gifted stuff. It isn't as free as everyone seems to think it is. Everything that you do or interact with in this community in some way, shape, or form comes with a price tag.
Yep.
You are not getting a bunch of free stuff just because people like you, or it is because you are putting your stuff out there, you're putting their stuff out there, you have a following that is of interest to them, your work is of interest to them. It's not and the other thing is they are hoping to work with you more exclusively, not to name names, but I have had companies come up to me, want to literally just throw product at me, and then essentially as long as you don't work with another company that does something similar.
No.
Right.
No. That's so tricky as a freelancer.
Yes. Now I will do artwork especially if it's a collaboration. If someone hires me, that's different. If you commission me to do work, someone else can commission me to do work of the same nature. I don't, I do try to avoid that because I don't like competition amongst my clients, but I also don't go out of my way. But if I collaborate with somebody, I absolutely don't work with another company that does the same exact thing. Because usually collaborations work on royalties. I don't have the time to promote 5 million other companies that I work with that all make the same thing.
Yeah.
And so
it ends up reducing your, what you end up getting out of it. It's
exactly.
Oh,
so
God.
Yeah,
it's such a tricky thing.
It is. There's a lot to navigate doing this, even as an influencer, much less as an artist or any other type of professional in this industry. It's a lot. And this is one of the few industries where I genuinely don't think that you could fake it till you make it.
No, you cannot.
Yeah.
No, and that's the other thing, that this is like any creative industry, that you don't generally get pity invites.
Right. Oh, God, no, you don't.
No, you don't, because I think I wrote an article about this many years ago at this point, and I said something in it to the effect of, these are people who run a business. And if you are invited to be part of that, it's because they are willing to take a chance on you. And nobody who stays in business in a sustainable way does pity chances, because that's their business on the line.
Yes.
So if you get invited to do something, there's a reason. There's a legitimate reason. You have something to offer. Now,
Right.
that's not always obvious what that is, and there have certainly been instances in my career, one even a couple months ago, where I talked to somebody and said, "Hey, I seem like an odd choice for this. What's up?" And that they gave me a really, really thoughtful explanation. I went, "That makes so much sense. Also, thank you."
Yeah.
But actually, I'm going to directly argue with you on something. There
Okay.
have been a couple of instances where somebody did give me something out of pure kindness, and one of those instances was you.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You did something incredibly kind for me, and I still have it on my shelf behind me.
Oh,
Yeah, you persuaded some mutual friends now to send me a wonderful whiskey cask dice holder.
yeah. Well, I mean, for that to me is a little bit different because it's not the same as someone sending you product expecting
That's
you
true.
to talk about it.
Right. That's it. It was Though there are most of the time it is
Yeah.
transactional.
Yes. And the other thing is like I am not like a lot of people in this industry because again,
You are
I'm not a
definitely not. That is I mean that in the absolutely most complimentary way possible. You are one of the most uniquely straightforward and insightful people I can think of. If there are a lot of times where if I want a straight opinion with a lot of clarity, you are the person I come to.
Aw, thank you. I try my best. Um I think that for me, I'm paying a lot of things forward in my life. I had an unusual childhood with extenuating circumstances, and I had some amazing people in my life gift me the ability to continue my education, to find a proper job, to actually, thrive. Because I was a kid on the streets and I was homeless. And I had some amazing opportunities that I would never have had otherwise. And they did it just to see me succeed in life. And didn't ask for anything in return, which is just amazing. And then even in this industry, I have had people who took a tremendous chance on a no-name artist and was like, yeah, no, we definitely want to see, your artwork, your art thrive and everything else. And even, even once my name got up there, I have had I'm absolutely gonna boast about him. I've had Matt Mercer absolutely in my corner, insisting that I do work, like on the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, and regardless of whether or not anyone had ever contemplated another cartographer, didn't matter, So to have that and have so much in my corner, I immediately like, okay, need to pay it forward because I can't pay them back.
Yeah,
So
it's the idea of a self-made person in this industry is like truly, truly a myth, and
yes,
it's something I tell people is that, and this it's so weird. It's so weird having a reputation for being a networker as someone who has a literal social disability. I
right.
cannot ever, and I've been invited to give workshops and talks on how to network within the game industry, and that comes up every time, that the irony of the fact that I have a literal social disability in this world, and yet this is what I do. And one of the things that comes up is this idea of building business relationships. Very often, people focus on the first word, but not the second.
Right.
And the relationship part is very important, and it takes time to build. And those relationships are so often the source of your success. And it doesn't matter
Absolutely.
what industry you're in. I owe a lot of my career to the person who is now the chief of staff at Hasbro, through Nick Mitchell. For a lot of, he's opened some serious doors for me. I've known his wife for nearly 30 years. We went to high school together, and I met Nick earlier in his career when they started dating, and Nick has always been a big believer and supporter of my career personally, aside from being a good friend.
Yeah.
And he opened one door, and then somebody else liked working with me, and that opened another, and that's what it takes. It's not me just going in and busting the door down. It's the networks.
Right. And a great example of this, the difference, I should say, is when I started doing cartography in this space, I come from a traditional art background. I wasn't intending to become a fancy cartographer because technically I did not know that was something you could do for a living. If we're going to be completely honest, I knew
I didn't
that
know
there were
game
names.
Psychologist was either, so you are in good company.
Right. So, but it is my passion for world building, my love of earth sciences. It's me completely geeking out. I am a LARPer. I have been playing this game for over 30 years. And it was those really geeky conversations with people like, Chris Perkins, Matt Mercer, like having just an engaging conversation without specifically doing it so they notice me.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, you don't comment on something like, oh, this is gonna spark this amazing lifetime friendship. They just post something geeky and I'm just being a goofball on like Twitter or something and just reply, because honestly, the amount of people that do message or comment on the things that we do where it doesn't feel like you're trying to have a genuine conversation, it feels more like you're trying to get us to notice you or to acknowledge a product or something you've made. Like it becomes painfully obvious at some point, and then you just start blocking those out because it's like, oh, it's just another one. So, engage with people. This is an incredibly personal hobby.
Oh, yeah.
We're emotionally attached to the game, to the settings, to our characters. If you want people to genuinely, if you want to become friends with people in this industry, talk to us about our worlds, our games, our characters, like on a genuine level.
Mm-hmm.
If at that later point in time that the subject of what you do for a living comes up, fabulous. But if that's your interaction with me, I generally, I start to ignore it because, again, I'm aware of how many people follow me. I'm not oblivious to it. I know that there's people who only want to work with me because of my name or who I'm associated with or how many followers I have on whatever platform. I'm aware. It's not news. Come on, people.
Now, this is especially poignant in the context of what I said earlier about my interview at the prison, because knowing my tendency when I get socially anxious and confused to try and compensate and act confident, trademark. But knowing that, there was something I started chanting to myself at conventions. A couple years into my career, and it was a game-changing thing for me. I would psych myself up if I felt myself getting nervous, and I would say over and over and over again to myself, "Don't be interesting, be interested."
There you go.
And it made such a difference. It was an absolute game changer, because then I didn't go into these things just like, "Notice me, senpai." Instead, it was, "Hey, no, I know who you are. I know what you do, and this is actually, I've got a question for you. That you made this choice here and here, and it was fascinating to me. Like, what made you do that?"
Right.
And and then suddenly people are talking back to me like I'm a colleague. instead of a
Yes.
fan. And that is such an important distinction.
Yes. Yeah. It is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast, because when I end up talking to people in the industry, either, for work or just for fun, or, even just, typing to each other and having a general conversation, I'm always reminded of the person that, I'm sorry, I have to laugh. And I'm so sorry if this person is listening. Someone ran up to me during a Comic-Con and was so excited to let me know that they don't treat the cast of Critical Role like famous people. And they feel like they obviously know that they didn't treat them that way, and therefore they're going to remember them. And I couldn't stop myself, because I can't. This is how I am. So I'm so sorry if I pissed this person off, but I was like, so in other words, you treated them like their friends and family normally do? Like, the people that we remember are the people that fangirled, and we don't necessarily remember it in a good way, not necessarily bad either, but like, if you treat us like a normal person, that's exactly how we were treated before anyone knew our name, or how our friends still treat us now. So that's normal.
Right.
That's like, oh, okay, great. It's not oh, thank God you're not fangirling, although occasionally I get like that with people.
Yeah, it depends on the time and the place. Yeah. I can think of a couple folks who are in my inner circle now who the first interaction that I had with them was them mocking me, and I'm like, you are not going the same way as these other people did.
Right.
You are a fascinating individual. I would like to know you better.
Right. If you talk to me like a normal person, I'm far more likely to engage with you.
Right. But it's not guaranteed.
Right. Well, I shouldn't say, don't talk to me like a normal person. Here, let me rephrase this. Talk to me like an enthusiastic tabletop player, or world builder, or writer, or artist. Because these are my passions, and these are the things I absolutely geek out over and nerd so hard that I've made it a living. It is my entire personality, and then some. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I love. And again, that's one of the reasons why I was like, oh, if I did this podcast, I get to like totally nerd out with a bunch of people that I'm already friends with.
Oh, but it's so much fun. And that's the thing. I'm finally at the point in my career where I now, having been in the game industry for nearly a decade, for the better part of a decade, where I am seeing the people I more or less came up with, they're having success.
Yeah.
And within certain circles, people know them, people know us. That's not to say that like, oh my God, we're famous, but we have a reputation within certain circles. I'd like to think I'm a C-level celebrity within a very small population of PAX. Those 12 people, they're my fan group.
Fame is relative. I mean,
it
compared
is.
to how tiny the RPG space is. No, we're not famous, but in that RPG space, yes, we are.
Within a certain subsect of that RPG space, the four people who are at mental health and RPGs, yes, we know. Right. They know who I am.
Right.
But it's a really interesting thing to see the people I started in this industry with, and to watch all of our careers evolve, and to be able to laugh about the fact that people are basically going in and doing the whole notice me senpai, or I'm very clearly, deliberately not trying to react to you like I admire you, but I very much admire you. Or we're going to get overly familiar, or whatever. For me, just personally, the sweet spot is collegial. Mm-hmm. If you treat me the same way that if you come to a convention and you meet me for the first time, and you treat me the same way you would another coworker who you're meeting for the first time.
Yes.
And that's the important thing, because of course there's coworkers you know really well, and there's the coworkers you're meeting for the first time. That's really the sweet spot for me. And then you have a neutral to good impression on me, and we see each other again, and we get to know each other, and those relationships build over time, and you cannot force that. When people
No.
try and force that, especially the time aspect, oh God, it's weird.
Yes. Yeah. Like a great example of this is I'm actually friends with quite a few people that originally started off as just followers or became patrons, and now they sit in my Discord and we just have a ball on a regular basis. And they're now friends, like close friends. Like I just went over to somebody's house and had dinner not too long ago because eventually these relationships build. And yes, she still occasionally fangirls a little bit, and it's adorable as fuck to me. Right, because, at this point, she knows who I am. There's no reason to fangirl, but she does occasionally, and that's fine.
Well, that's such a it's not a new phenomenon, but it's getting more attention these days, is the concept of parasocial relationships.
Yes.
And it's not a new concept. The original formal research was done in the 1950s, but it's even older than that because fandoms have existed for millennia.
Right.
But what's really interesting is the way it's morphing. Previously, it was thought of as this one-sided, intense emotional connection to a media personality that you have frequent exposure to, fictional or otherwise. Because I definitely have a parasocial relationship with two guys named Rogers. One of them is Fred. The other one is Steve. Mr. Rogers and Captain America. And it's an example of a good thing, because parasocial relationships aren't always a bad thing. They can be really quite healthy. I kind of think to myself, what would Captain America or what would Mr. Rogers do? And it's often a good question to ask.
Yes.
Because I'm aware that it is a parasocial relationship. But where it gets interesting with new forms of media like live streaming and content creation and being in a Discord and podcasts is it's this 1.5-sided relationship where people don't necessarily know the boundaries.
Right.
And there's a mutual friend of ours, Tanya DePass, Cipher of Tyr.
I can't wait to have her on the show.
Oh my God. Well, Tanya frequently, whenever I pop into her chats or her streams, she refers to me in an extremely familiar way because we've known each other for nearly 10 years and we're close.
Right.
And she calls me Roth. When we're not in a professional setting, you do too. My friends can call me that. But if randos at a convention are hi Roth, no, that is so uncomfortable. That is so overly familiar. And Tanya goes out of her way to say, hey, basically disclaimer, hey gang, if you might be hearing me talk to Dr. B in a very familiar way, and you might be hearing Dr. B talk to me in a very familiar way, because we are friends and we've known each other a long time, but that doesn't mean you're his friend. So be respectful, folks. And people have to be overtly told that because they take these context cues from people, and then they just act on it. But oh God, it's so uncomfortable when people get overly familiar. I'm like, oh, you call me what my significant other calls me, and I don't know you.
Yeah, like I do it a lot with everyone. Like wants to give me the nickname Dev. First off, no. I've already got a short fucking name. And if I wanted to be known as Dev, I would have fucking put my name on the internet as Dev, not Devin. Clearly, I don't want people using that name. But also, ask first.
Yeah.
Ask first. Hey, do you mind if I call you Dev? Nah, I don't really like it.
God.
Oh, okay. But you don't fucking know me? Here's where my New Yorker comes out. You don't fucking know me. Don't fucking.
And Robert De Niro has entered the building.
No, abso-fucking-lutely. I think we're a little bit more Joe Pesci.
I saw things.
I'm more Joe Pesci.
What
am I, a clown to amuse you?
Yeah, no, that was definitely some Goodfellas right there.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is a lot of thing is. What people don't understand is they want that familiar. Don't get me wrong. We are all absolutely looking for our online family. We're all looking for our gaming family.
Oh, yeah.
And I 100% understand. I too am always looking for people that I connect with. We're here doing this really emotional, embarrassing, putting our personal thoughts and feelings out there kind of game.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, you have to understand that a lot of people aren't okay with it just being an instantaneous anything as you are. I make the joke, I run at 90 miles an hour with everything. If I'm going to do something, I'm absolutely doing it at a speed in which most people are like, what is the matter with you? Are you on fire? Like, or did you just find out that you're terminal or something? Or are you going to why are you doing this? Like, you've got 5 days to live and you need to finish this. Well, that's my personality. I'm just not like that in relationships.
Yeah. It's, well, I mean, we have our different motivators.
Yes. So, and again, I understand it's still not going to make me any less uncomfortable, unfortunately, because it's still me. I may understand, but that doesn't mean that it's not uncomfortable. And if I have been, unfortunately, I've been very short and succinct with people. That is my way of talking.
One of the things I appreciate about you, actually.
I wish other people did. Instead, most people take it as me being very hostile.
I was talking about this with another autistic friend of mine, and one of the things we've noticed about ourselves is how many of the people we get along with who are from Boston, New York, and Philadelphia.
Right.
Because there is very little ambiguity where I stand with the people I know from Boston, Philly, and New York City. I just know. Whereas, my friends, Chicago notwithstanding, because my friends from Chicago proper, I also know where I stand with them. But from the North Shore Chicago suburbs, it's the Midwest and the Deep South. That is autism hell. Okay. There's so much coded communication, but the directness of my friends from Chicago proper, Philly, New York, and Boston.
We don't fucking have time. We live in a city. Shit's always just changing. We just got to communicate exactly what it is we need, or else we're going to get run over by a taxi cab. We just got to, we have a pace.
It's great.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it. It's one of the things I actually really miss about living in a city and everything else. I miss New York terribly sometimes. Just not always. During when it's really cold, I don't miss New York anymore. During COVID, I really didn't miss New York anymore. But I miss the food. Oh man. Anyhow, I can go on a whole tangent about that.
Oh no, I actually appreciate that directness so much, because it's one of those things where with other people, I'm kind of wondering, God, did I do something to offend them and I don't know it? Are they just being nice? Whereas, my New York, Boston, Philly, and Chicago friends, I'm pissed. Okay, I can work with this.
Right. I'm very, I had somebody not too long ago do the same thing where they're like, I don't know what I did to make you upset with me. And I was like, I'm not upset with you. I don't know what you're talking about. They're like, oh, but you're being very hostile towards me. And I was like, no, I'm just, you asked me something direct that was non-emotional, so I just answered
a factual answer.
Right. There shouldn't be any emotional indicators for a factual statement. I don't understand. I mean, I do. I understand, but I forget all the time. And also, I'm an artist. My main form of genuine communication is art. So, I don't necessarily think about giving a nice, big, emotional answer to a very specific, factual question. If you ask me what color the sky is, I'm just going to go blue. I didn't know that I need to like wax the poetic prose and tell you the specific color or the scientific answer for that matter either. I technically will answer you clear, but what a refraction, what a blah, blah, blah makes it blue. That'll answer with, but that's the closest you get.
God,
Otherwise, yeah.
No, I used to. I was previously married, and my in-laws were a family of Midwest Jewish folks, and the amount of coded communication that existed
Yes.
within their family, I was frequently told I needed to make apologies because I did such things as when asked where would you like to go for dinner, I answered directly instead of deferring to other people for the next half an hour, which was, I'm told later, the custom.
Yes. Yes, it is. I
And
don't
I
do that
was-
either. We're in the same boat.
I was so confused because my now ex-wife informed me that no, you're not supposed to answer that directly. I'm like, what do you mean? Your mom asked me directly,
Right.
and I've also at other times heard your mom say, will somebody just make a decision? And so I'm like, okay, I have heard both of those things. I have entered the data into my brain, and I am answering the question. At which point I was subtly, because of course you can't say this overtly,
Right.
I was subtly told I did a bad,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
I did a confused.
This is one of the reasons why, if you ever join my Discord, listeners, if you ever join my Discord, there's a whole lovely list of my personal boundaries and also how to be in a voice chat with me, because as a partially blind person, I do rely on my hearing a great deal. And if I'm just in a conversation, that's different. But if I'm playing a video game, and unfortunately a mutual friend of ours has discovered this, if I'm playing a video game and you talk the entire time, not being mean or anything, you're just chatting and something is happening, I start to go into sensory overload.
Oh God, yeah.
And I can't focus on two things. And if you start asking me questions, I you know what? I gotta go.
Yeah.
I cannot do this.
Split attention. Nope.
Yeah. Not happening. I'm out. Love you to pieces. Gotta go bye.
Nope. Can't do it. Cannot
Right.
do it. Negatory.
Yes. And I have had people where, a bunch of people have been in voice chat with me and they're all talking at once. And I start I can't focus on one person enough to answer a question to move on. You know what? I'm out. We're done. This has been great. Love y'all. Gotta go. Bye. And I just leave.
Yeah, it gets too much, and I love the fact that now in fairness, I've brought up my ex-in-laws already, and I don't want to paint them in an unfortunate or villainous
Right.
light, because for a good chunk of the time that I was married, I didn't know I was autistic. And so I didn't have the knowledge base I do now to be able to explain or help other people understand some of my idiosyncrasies. All they knew was I behaved very differently than they came to expect. So,
Right.
I've had to do a lot of splaining, but I'm very fortunate now to have a more full understanding of my sensory needs, my attention needs, and so forth. And I'm also very blessed to be surrounded by folks, including yourself, who understand and have their own needs. And that's just a factual thing. If it's different than the expected, then so be it. That's
Right.
okay. Normal in this case is purely a statistical term, not a moral judgment.
Right. Oh yeah. And again, I'm painfully aware that I am probably the only partially blind person that a lot of people in our community interacts with. So I become aware that, a lot of or at least interacts in to that extent. So I realize that I end up becoming inadvertently the spokesperson, which please don't do that to me, because Everyone else has their own unique stuff going on. It's not just me. Please don't. But
Devin,
anyhow,
don't you know every group is a monolith and any one person can represent the opinion of the entire group?
oh god, yes, people have done this to me, and it's terrifying.
Please don't do that to people.
Right. But yeah, but again, I understand to a degree, of course, that people do this. All right, fine. We'll just work within those parameters as best as possible. When you overstep, I'll let you know, type of thing. But also I just had someone apologize for using the word see. I see what you mean. And I was like, you do realize that we understand metaphor, right? Like, our vision is impaired, not our mental understanding of English. Like, it's a metaphor. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see what you mean. You don't have to apologize for using words that imply vision. How weird. I have some.
Well, it's. I mean, but this gets to the fact that any group is not a monolith, and
right.
I doing a little research into this within the autism community, there seems to be an age-based discrepancy between preferences in using like identity first language versus person first language when it comes to self-identification of autism, and people who are my age are, at least based on the last research I looked at, are more likely to use both interchangeably than people who are younger, because my and this is for me only, I always try and respect how people self-identify within any community, is that for me, as like, I don't, kind of like Patton Oswalt said, evil motherfuckers will learn the language, and so I care less about the accuracy of the words than I do the context of how you say it. At least in reference to me, if you say I am a person with autism and the next words out of your mouth are respectful and inquisitive, and then give me a place in the conversation, then cool, we're fine.
Yes.
And so, but also I wonder about language policing, especially for a group of people that have a social disability. I think that ends up actually creating more inaccessibility, and there's a whole tension there and conversations. But anyway, I'm waxing philosophic here.
It fits a lot, so I will have, and this is the weirdest thing for me, I will have normal sighted people tell me that blind people don't appreciate me calling myself blind because I have some sight.
Okay, bold claim, Cotton.
Right.
All right, let's see how that plays.
So I hate to point this out, but of the entire blind community, if you go on the American Association for the Blind, it says of the blind community, only 2% are fully blind, which means that they obviously consider people who have some form of eyesight part of the blind fucking community.
Wait, hold up. You're telling me that in a community where 49 out of 50 people fall under a certain category, those 49 out of 50 people are considered part of that community?
I know, right? Weird shit.
I call shenanigans on this.
You can, but guess what? You're not a part of our community, so you don't get to dictate
Touché.
What we do and don't like. Or how we identify.
Oh God, it's
right.
I love it when people, treat the autism community, treat the ADHD community like a monolith and expect us all to fall under a certain category, and if we don't, then we clearly don't actually fit. It's lovely. He said with as much sarcasm as he can muster.
Well, so what I want to oh God, there's so many instances, and I could probably go on forever about things like this and the misunderstandings of people with autism or being partially blind or fully blind for that matter. What I'm really not curious. What's the word I'm looking for? What I think would be interesting is what do you do with that wonderful degree and everything that you have? What is it exactly
Cry.
that you right? Yeah. Within this community, like, because you say, "Oh, I work with take this," but what is it that you do? What do you do?
What do I do? I do mostly education. There are two types of doctorates. Well, there's actually more than two types of doctorates in psychology. As I think about it, there's doctorates of education. There's doctorates of counseling psychology. There's PhDs. There's PsyDs. There's a lot of different types of doctorates, and they mean different things based on what they are. Now, I have what's called a PsyD, a Doctorate of Clinical Psychology, which is more clinically focused than research focused. Because I thought I was just going to do therapy with people for the rest of my life, as well as, psych assessments and so forth. And I do some direct clinical work these days. I still have a few clients left, but I'm slowly transitioning out of that. I might do assessments in the future, but I'm these days doing more administrative, management, education, and advocacy work. Because this is still fun to bring up with my dad, because I think I have the only father in the world who's angry his son didn't become an actor. If it wasn't psychology, it would have been acting. And it's fun to bring up at parties that I could have been an actor, Dad. And he's going, I know. Oh, or people, what's he do now? He's a psychologist and he does blah, blah, blah. It's like that Monty Python sketch, actually,
Right.
where the class reversal happened. But I found through my work at Take This that I really love teaching. I really love doing policy advocacy. I really love helping people to gain knowledge and access to this better world, to the world of mental health, because my industry has done a piss poor job of a lot of things. And I mean, if you look at the history of psychiatry, psychology within the history of Western psychology and psychiatry specifically, there's a lot of really awful stuff,
Right.
absolutely horrific stuff. Eugenics comes to the top of my mind, but there's a lot of stuff, and that has ramifications to this day, and how a lot of things were applied. But one of the things my industry does not do a good enough job about is educating people on their own mental health.
Right.
And like the number of people in their early 20s, because I love working with late adolescents, young adults. I love working with that age range because they're often motivated, they're curious, they want to find their place in the world, and that's just personally fun folks for me to work with.
Right.
And what I find is that somebody who may have had an ADHD diagnosis since if they were 7 years old, and I say, well, you know about this, you know what ADHD looks like and what the symptoms are. And, they're 23, 16 years later, they say, no, I actually don't. And I'm like, oh, are you kidding? Nobody ever taught you this stuff? They just diagnosed you and nobody ever taught you what ADHD actually looks like? Do you want to take the remainder of our hour-long therapy session and just answer some questions so I can teach you what ADHD looks like? And inevitably their response is, yeah, actually.
Yeah.
And throughout the course of that, I'm like, okay, and let's just go through the book. Let's look at the symptoms. And they're like, that's one of them too? I'm like, yes. And then there's the stuff that isn't directly in the book that people might know about. And then we end up talking about misconceptions that they have, because while TikTok and content creation has certainly made mental health information more accessible, a lot of the time it's not accurate information. In fact, there was a study done out of the UK about ADHD TikTok, and 52% of the information found on TikTok was false. Right. About ADHD. There's some really common misconceptions about ADHD that feel so validating that they've taken off like wildfire within the ADHD community, that we lack object permanence because we have this out of sight, out of mind phenomena. No, we do not lack object permanence. That is an entirely different concept. What we struggle with is uncued memory recall as well as memory encoding. And
Right.
we do have this out of sight, out of mind phenomena, but that's not the same as object permanence, because the difference is, if I lacked object permanence and you told me I had a significant other and I couldn't see her, I would not believe you.
Right.
That's what lacking object permanence actually is. And so, but it feels like a validating term, so it took off. We struggle with rejection sensitivity, but rejection sensitivity dysphoria. Oh, I may end up writing a journal article on this next year, because it's not a researched concept, and the way it was originally proposed by the guy who proposed it, there are a lot of methodological flaws. Plus, he claimed that it is exclusive to ADHD, and it's not. Rejection sensitivity is a common experience for a lot of really similar reasons across a lot of different diagnoses that struggle with emotional dysregulation as well as stigma. That combination of chronic stigma and emotional dysregulation, we feel a lot of rejection sensitivity. But anyway, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and in my very circumlocucious way of answering questions, I found I love getting to help people have a better, more accurate understanding of what's going on for them. And so I end up doing that within my private practice. But also with Take This, we get to do general education on a broad scale, but we also get to do really cool things like consultation on mental health representation in games. And, I mentioned getting to work with Dimension 20 earlier, and they brought some great questions and did a bang up job. I got to be a technical consultant on the game Psychonauts 2. That's still an awesome thing. I can't believe I get to say. I've done, mental health representation consults on a variety of tabletop RPGs, usually indie. But I also get to talk to high-level game executives about policies. I'm Take This as burnout expert, not in a self-incriminating way, though it might be at times. I'm the de facto expert on the research and what occupational burnout is. And so we just get to put out good information into the world, and that gives people the ability to have better conversations with themselves, better conversations with their healthcare providers, better conversations with their friends and family, because they have more knowledge instead of being at the behest of people who are just slapping labels on.
Right. I had an amazing therapist years and years ago. I was diagnosed with PTSD and or complex PTSD.
Oy.
And had to work through a lot, and including recognizing that I was self-sabotaging my own relationships. Yeah.
Wait, people do that?
I definitely did.
I totally didn't do that in my 20s. What?
Yeah, what? Yeah. But the great thing is, like, she gave me some really amazing advice, which is you can't stay in a relationship with somebody who doesn't have any tools on how to deal with the same things that you're dealing with. Your partner may not have PTSD, but if you give them the right tools, they can deal with the repercussions of you having it.
Oh my God, that's brilliant.
Right? And I was like, okay. All right, fine. Just fucking call me out like that. And it took a while for me to even accept that, because PTSD, despite, I don't want to be mean about it. There's a lot of people who just take on a mental illness because there's some similarities in their life to it and aren't actually being diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand, because a lot of us, especially when things are utterly confusing or very difficult in our lives, it's nice to have something that you feel like
Well, it's validating.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can't stress enough that if you believe on any level that you have PTSD, please go seek a therapist.
Well, can I jump in and say something about that?
Please do.
Because this is something that's in the autism community as well. Self-diagnosis,
Mhm.
and there, people have asked me, do I think self-diagnosis is valid? And what I often answer with is, I don't think self-diagnosis should have to be a thing. And the
Right.
fact that we're even having this conversation is a failure of the medical industry, because
Absolutely.
that whether or not I think self-diagnosis is valid or not, my bigger concern is that the fact that self-diagnosis has to exist, and it does have to exist because, one, getting formal diagnostics, especially as an adult, is expensive as hell.
Yes.
Um, and there are so few people who deal effectively and affirmingly with adult diagnoses of things like autism and ADHD. Who a lot of mental health professionals and medical professionals are told those are quote unquote kids disorders.
Yeah.
And I take umbrage with, is it a mental illness? Is it an operating system? And that's a whole nuanced conversation unto itself. And
Right.
definitely the latter. But it, it, I do want to tell people that there are pros and cons to self-diagnosis.
Yeah.
There are pros and cons. And actually my former professor and the person who started an organization called the Awake Project, which is the Autistic Women's Awareness, Knowledge, Empowerment Project, had a great chart on the pros and cons of both. But I also want to say that it doesn't have to be a full-on diagnosis to be a concern.
No, which is why, like I was trying desperately to word it. If you believe on any scale that you may have PTSD or something similar, and you're able to absolutely talk to a counselor, talk to a therapist, talk to somebody, because the longer that you go without the right tools,
Oh God.
the harder your life becomes, the more difficult your relationships are.
Oh my God, yes.
The harder it is for other people to deal with you, and the more isolating it gets.
So bad.
And especially in my particular case, it's because I grew up, again, under extenuating circumstances. I didn't even remotely think that having PTSD from that was possible. And
Yeah.
right. And it wasn't until I had a particularly terrifying episode of dealing with a breakdown and everything else that I went to a counselor for an entirely different reason. I thought there was something hormonal wrong with me, maybe, or like medically wrong, because I don't understand. I'm having these like, all of a sudden I'm just drenched in sweat and my heart is racing, and for no fucking reason, quote unquote. I thought I was going into like, I thought there was something wrong with my heart or something, like clearly couldn't be mental.
Well, that's just it. This is just from a professional standpoint. This is part of if anybody ever asks themselves why people get so many different diagnoses, it's because the tricky part about mental health diagnostics is that we are trying to gauge internal experiences from external clues.
Yes.
And there are so many factors, cultural, social, physical, that affect how we express internalized distress.
Right.
And just as a fairly low-hanging fruit example, when people have come to me in the past and been worried that they may have ADHD because they're having a hard time paying attention to some things, well, my response, depending on the level of relationship I have with them, varies in how cheeky it is. But
Right.
for the ones that I have a good relationship with, and it can be a little snarky, response is, okay, well, do you know how many mental health diagnoses affect attention? And they're like, no. And I would say, if you either directly or indirectly, if you say all of them, you would be correct. So
Right.
now I know that attention is one of the struggles that they're having. Maybe it's the only one, maybe it's not. But now I have to somehow rule things out. And if I miss something important, which human error is a thing, then they get the wrong diagnosis. And this is part of the reason that Alan Francis, who was the chair of the previous DSM, that for those of you who don't know, the DSM is kind of the Bible according to the American Psychiatric Association. He was the chair of the DSM-4, and he said something on Twitter one time that just stuck with me, that diagnoses should be written in pencil, not pen.
Yes.
Because it's so easy to miss something, and it's so easy to get things wrong. And if we don't have the humility to be able to change this as people who have an inordinate amount of social power within that behavioral medical context, we're gonna harm people.
Yes.
If we don't listen, if we don't go with things, if they say, hey, you don't understand, and instead of saying, well, crap, I guess I don't understand, what am I missing? We respond with what has so often been said, no, you don't understand.
Right.
And a lot of harm has been done that way through either just honest mistakes about diagnostics or deliberate ignorance. And it's bad news. I wish my industry had a little bit more humility in that respect.
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with, I think a lot of people are looking for such an exact response, such an exact answer. Like, okay, I'm going to answer these 20 questions and you're going to tell me exactly what's wrong with me. And then we're going to quote unquote cure it.
Nah.
I'm going to state right now, I have PTSD and will have for my entire life. I have the tools to live with it and cope with it, and gave the tools to my partner to also do the same thing. But I will have it my entire life. There isn't a cure for it. Being diagnosed with it didn't save me from having to deal with it. It just gave a name to it and gave me a set of tools that are unique to me.
Yeah.
No other person with PTSD can have my tools and be able to have a fully productive life in the same manner, because it doesn't work that way.
Nope.
And the same is true with any of them. And I don't perceive me having PTSD, even though technically I understand why it makes people uncomfortable. To me, it is no more a disability to me than my blindness is. And by the way, my blindness is absolutely not a disability. It's not a hindrance. It's not an obstacle. It's a part of me, just like my skin, my hair, my eyes. It's just me. And so is my PTSD. Do I still seek a counselor's help? Absolutely, because new things crop up that I don't have the tools for, so I find the new tools for them. Yes, I still seek therapy, and I always will, because it's important that I understand that this is a lifetime situation.
You know, it's interesting for me to hear you say that, because you and I have such different experiences, I think, around the word disability.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm very casual about it. I'm like, yes, this is my autism, my ADHD, these are disabilities. What of it?
Yes, I don't mean it like disability is a bad thing. I just mean it like I don't perceive it as oh God, what is the word I'm looking for? Like I get asked all the time.
Like a failure? Or
right.
Some moral mark against you?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see it as that at all.
Yeah,
I love
people
who
really
I
do
am.
use it with a moral implication.
Right. You know, I constantly get people like, oh my God, what obstacles did you have to overcome as a blind artist?
The freaking charity model or like moral model of disability.
Yeah. I didn't have to overcome anything that any other artist didn't. they had to draw constantly or paint constantly or whatever and practice in order to achieve their level. Same here. The only difference is I couldn't learn in school the way they did because I don't see the way they do. And that's it.
Yeah, it's such a, I mean, it's, God,
Yeah.
it's strange that, as a mutual friend of ours, Mackenzie de Armas, who is so insightful around this stuff.
Mhm.
I love getting to talk with Mackenzie.
She's amazing.
About she and I have done a bunch of panels together about autism. Because she's very, very public about her autism as well. So, she's talked about her autism and also some of her physical disability stuff as well. And she said that being disabled is the only form of marginalization that you can come to later in life.
Mhm.
And I did. I didn't realize I had a disability until I was 35. And I've done a lot of soul searching around that word since then. And one of the things that, it sounds like we share this, one of the things that absolutely gets under my skin is the fact that people treat it as a moral word as opposed to simply a functionality thing. That, okay, I have a different rule set that I'm playing with here, and we need to figure out a way to adapt your rule set to my rule set and vice versa. This is a question of mutual interface, not some moral failing on my part.
Right.
Oh, you still want to go with the moral route? Okay. Oh God. Yeah, no, tell me how inspirational I am. I don't know what I did, but you can keep telling me that.
Right. One of the things that annoy me the most is when someone goes, "Oh my God, you're partially blind. Your artwork is even more impressive." Motherfucker,
Okay.
my artwork is impressive to begin with. Full fucking stop. My eyesight clearly doesn't have that effect on it the same way you think. It's how I had to learn to do art. That's the only difference.
I know you know this already, but in case you didn't, I feel the urge to tell you that you have a superpower.
I mean, I do. I just didn't know you knew about it.
That's the other thing that, that what comes out of this charity/moral model of disability is the way people talk about it, like, well, it's okay that you have this disability because you're exceptional in these other areas. And like, you have, like, one, there's so many problems with that statement that I have to be exceptional to be valid. Right. And somehow me being exceptional when I very much might not be in other areas somehow erases the challenges that I have. Right. And that makes it okay. Who are you making this okay for? You or me? Because I'm aware I still have these challenges regardless. If I can't find the sugar, I don't care how much sugar I have in the basement, I still can't find the sugar.
Right. Here's the answer to that question. And I ask this of every normal-sighted person who feels the need to point out the disabilities and hardships us blind people must go through. When you see a fully blind person, wearing sunglasses, why are they wearing them?
I mean, I always assumed it was for other people.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. I wear tinted glasses all the time. One, because I have highly light sensitive eyes. But even in darkness or on video and everything else, I still wear them because it absolutely unnerves normal-sighted people to watch one of my eyes just slowly drift off doing its own fucking thing. And it's like, are you looking at me? Don't mind that one. Just ignore that. It's got its own agenda. It's fine. It's not an indication in any way that I'm not listening to you or I'm bored. That eye just does what it wants.
I actually, there's an experience sometimes friends of mine have being around, hanging around me, and especially when I'm hanging out with other autistic folks, where And I really have to applaud my friends who are brave enough to compassionately and directly bring this up.
Mhm.
They talk about how strange it is to be around my other autistic friends and me when they're the only non-autistic person in the room. And they say they're very confused about the social dynamic. They're confused about the interactions, what we're supposed to do and what we're not, and so forth. And then I get to say, hey, cool, you had the autism experience,
Yes.
but you got to walk away from it.
Right. Oh,
And
yeah.
it opens up a really interesting conversation. Not that they, at that point, that if any of them are like, I get it now. No, you don't.
No, you get a small portion of a single day.
Right. But it's fascinating to me how many of those friends who when we've had those conversations have been so much more compassionate and humble about the experiences that I have and they have, and just how differently we experience the world.
I wish to say that was true across all disabilities, but as a GM to a table of 8 players that are deaf, hard of hearing, and or blind, fully blind or partially, we have tried to have normal hearing and sighted people at our table, and that compassion doesn't always come across when they feel on the outside of our group, which is amazing to us considering how very othered we are made to feel out in public. At least no, I don't. It's weird to say it this way because I don't mean it in a like, oh, you have it better than us. I don't mean it like that at all. But you have the ability of somebody not immediately knowing, right? Whereas with me, I'm standing there with a blind person, cane and glasses. So at a Comic-Con, someone might think I'm cosplaying, but that's about it.
Oh no, it's the passing privilege as a whole. It is very much a whole thing, and it's a complication unto itself. It's also certain advantages because I could infiltrate.
Yes,
I can sneak in and I can be a double agent. And
exactly.
People are like, but you're autistic, and I said yes, I am. My code name is Agent 53 because I don't know. We like numbers.
Random number that we yes.
And
absolutely.
But at the same time, there's also people make assumptions about my capabilities and my needs because I have that passing privilege.
Right. How many people want to take you to Las Vegas?
Oh, Christ on a cracker. Oh my God. Oh God, if I never have to go to Las Vegas again, I will be so happy. Las Vegas is the 4th circle of autism hell.
Yeah, but you must be amazing at counting cards.
Yeah, well, that's where the ADHD comes in, and then I have working memory challenges.
Right. I'm like, what?
I have working memory problems and processing speed problems, and it's yay.
Right.
It makes me forget that all autistic people must be savants. We absolutely cannot simply have challenges. We must also have the subsequent superpowers that go along with all. I'm a covert X-Man, is what I am.
Hey,
I'm not.
All us blind people get to be Daredevil. I have amazing hearing. I can hear a mouse sneeze 3 houses over. My hearing is so good. Raindrops landing on buildings and people and fabric suddenly make the world appear in my eye, even despite the fact that I can't see anything, so wouldn't envision it like that anyhow. But okay. Fuck.
Oh God, it makes me so angry.
Oh yes, it does. I love to ask this question. So, how do you think a fully blind person who has never had sight, was born blind, what do you think they dream in?
How would I have any reference point for that? I don't have any reference point for that any more than I expect somebody who's non-autistic to understand the fact that all of the implied communication that allistic people use doesn't grok to me.
Well, here, I'll help you because my response to that is pick your elbow up, right? And point it at your monitor in this case,
Okay.
right? What does your elbow see?
I mean, my elbow does not have ocular receptors.
Exactly. I don't miss seeing out of that eye any more than you miss seeing out of your elbow. My friends that are partially blind, yeah, same thing. There's no information that goes to the brain like that. So even if somebody was to, for some reason, be able to have phenomenal hearing, you still wouldn't piece together an image like that if you were born blind and don't have that same kind of mental imagery.
You don't have the same reference point.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
No,
yeah.
That God, I didn't realize after my autism diagnosis how incredibly liberating it would be, and I may get choked up about this. Like how incredibly liberating it was to be around people who actually got it, to not have to explain it, to not have to come up with all the really wonderful metaphors I have over the decades,
Or to not have to like apologize for your behavior or to excuse your language.
No, instead, there's just a lot of there. I found out amongst the autistic people and I who get along because there's very often I found there's a lot of conflicting sensory needs.
Right.
I love it when people have made the bold claim that if the whole world was autistic, we would all get along, and I'm like, no,
we wouldn't.
no. Here's how this would go. There is the country who does not eat the textures which shall not be named, who go to war with the empire which makes that sound, and they would fight to the overload about sensory stuff.
Yes. Absolutely.
But when I'm around my autistic friends who, our needs are compatible, and it's no judgment when people have needs that aren't compatible, they're just not compatible, such is life. And, you do you, I'll do my thing, and we'll just be doing them apart. And those friends and I, when we get together, more often than not, it's us reminding each other that we don't have to apologize.
Yes.
That we don't have, it's somebody starts to explain it, and we're like, no.
We don't.
It's
yeah,
it's us.
We get it.
Sorry. No, we get that too. Don't have to apologize.
Oh yeah. And like so again, some of my players are deaf, are hard of hearing. They use sign language. I wish I was far more fluent in it. I was about to say lazy, but that's an inaccurate word. I'm so busy a lot of times. I don't get to like sit down and be in video calls with them.
You are not lazy.
Yeah, no. And so we text, a lot of our conversations and our games are in text format. So but what I love is when we all are, in video and everything, I get to, because I have the most sight out of our group, so I get to explain to everyone else what is going on. Or, we have one of who's my co-DM, she does fluent sign language, so she kind of interprets for, half the table, and then I have to explain visual things to the other half, But our language, even in our game, is so different than when we're around normal sighted or hearing people, that it's nothing against anyone who is normal sighted or hearing. Like, it's not like we want to purposefully exclude you. It's just nice not to have to deal with explaining everything.
Yeah.
Or not have to constantly, like, a perfect example. I had someone at my table who's normal sighted. It was just me and my blind players. By the way, a lot of people in the blind community, we just refer to ourselves as blind, even if we do have some mode of sight. Just because we don't feel the need to quantify the level of blindness.
It's just understood that there is a continuum.
Right. if glasses or surgery improve your eyesight, then you are not legally blind and you are not part of the blind community. Those of us that can't have any improvement done and fit the criteria, then we're just, after that point, we're all fucking blind. Mm-hmm. We make jokes about it endlessly.
I think that's the beauty part about the in-community jokes. Like,
right.
God, I said something the other day to my significant other, who it's just how to ADHD. She's wonderful, and I got to give credit where it's due. She's been instrumental in me kind of coming to terms and accepting a lot of who I am and how I interact with the world with a lot less shame than I used to. And I ended up making this joke to her. Oh God! I'm trying to remember. It was so perfect. She couldn't stop laughing, but of course she can, because she's part of the in crowd, the cousin, the autistic and ADHD experience. Right. It was. Oh God! And now it's totally escaping me. What did I say? It was so. Oh yeah, no, there were that there are certain stereotypes about being autistic that I hate, like people telling me, "Oh, you count everything." 1,047 times they said that. I mean, my autistic friends thought that was hilarious.
Right. I mean, it is. But I can hear the people going, "What?"
Or like, "Oh, can you say that?" "Yes, I can."
Yeah. Oh, that is a whole other tangent for me.
What the within group comments and the dominant culture saying, "Well, that's a double standard that we should be able to say it too." No, let's get into the social dynamics here. Let's talk about power differentials and let's talk about how when you say it, it's punching down and it's bullying.
Yes.
You don't know.
Oh, the one of the things that I genuinely have such a problem with is, so I was talking about my group with other people, and someone's like, "Oh, would you ever consider streaming?" And I said, no. We had a big, long conversation before my name started getting out there. I said, one, can I talk about our campaigns? I don't want to offer any information none of you are comfortable with. And we agreed I can talk about the campaign or funny things with the characters, not my players specifically. And then as I started doing more advocacy for accessibility, there, we kind of changed the rules a little bit, because we all believe nothing is set in stone, and I do it according. My players are 100% behind what I do and don't share, so we communicate a lot. So I was talking about the game, and they're like, "Would you stream?" And I was like, "Oh no," And the biggest reason is, one, when you are part of a particular community that shares whatever disability, we do have our own language. We have our own medical terms. Yep. We have our own expressions for things.
Yep.
And unfortunately, because we are together, we don't have to explain it to each other. And we forget that there may be other people watching or listening that don't know what we're saying, and therefore we would have to explain it. And that kind of just breaks part of the problem. Again, I'm not blind when I'm at home by myself, because my house is completely set up for me. Mm-hmm. And it's only when I come in contact with the outside world that my blindness becomes a factor. Mm-hmm. And the same is true with most people with disabilities. We set up our homes and our safe spaces to not have to deal with the extra things in the world that normal people kind of put in our way.
Yeah. I mean, now we're getting into for anybody who's listening who doesn't know, I mean, this is what's called the social model of disability.
Yes.
Where there's a difference between just having a factual impairment versus that impairment becoming a disability due to environmental constraints. And yeah, it's a really important distinction.
Yes. And so I was saying about how, this makes us have to explain to people, and we have had sighted people in our game. And because I don't use visual context for a lot of the things I'm describing, I upset one of the players that we had so bad he did not know where we were or what was going on, because I did not think at all to add visual cues, because to me, I laid out a ton of cues already with sound, smell, texture. Like, I had already laid all that out. So why would I explain what you're looking at?
Right. Oh.
Right. And he was so confused that when we actually went into combat, he didn't know. He kept asking me in a really angry way where things were. And so again, without thinking, we use a face on a clock to describe where things are. The person we're talking about is always facing noon.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right. Regardless of where they're actually facing on a compass, doesn't fucking matter. You are always facing the 12. Mm-hmm. So, something directly to your right is at 3, directly to your left is at 9, and so on and so forth. So then I'm using that with him because, again, this is how we do combat. So I was like, oh, they're at your 11. And he's like, what the fuck does that mean?
First of all, I didn't know that was a common. Up until this moment, I didn't know that was a common concept within the blind community, but that's commonly used in military and sports communities as well. So I'm just surprised.
Well, I think this person was at that point so expecting things to be different that anything I was explaining didn't fit. Or when you get super frustrated that something isn't explained adequately and like directions on how to, I don't know, program something.
Do I, as an autistic person, know what it's like to feel confused? No, not at all.
Right. Exactly.
Do I ever get angry and melt down during those times? Oh, maybe.
Right.
Maybe this morning.
Right. So, I think he was veering towards that because none of the context was presented to him in the same way that it is in a regular D&D game. And because of that, instead of like genuinely paying attention and being like, okay, I understand you're giving these different cues, I think he was just getting angry and more angry over the fact that it wasn't, I hate to say this, wasn't presented to him his way. Because that is how normally it goes. Oh, somebody's 60 feet in front of you. Again, my personal experience isn't the same as everyone else's. Other blind people don't use the same terms as we do. My friends are actually, I don't know anyone who doesn't use the clock term, but other than that, like we don't use the words feet or inches or miles or whatever. Least of all in combat, we say how many steps you are, which still translates to feet.
Oh, cool.
Right. So if I say, because they're just asking how far, well, one, we don't use any visual rules in our game, obviously, because why would we? So any spell that says, well, if you can see it, we don't do it that way.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
Line of sight would be, that's an irrelevant rule concept.
Right. The other thing is that argument, nope. What's the word?
Arguably?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you can shoot lightning out of your hand, how come it can't go around something? So,
Huh. So what you're saying is that fantasy rules may be flexible.
Yes, 100%.
Heresy.
Yeah, I know, right? Fuck.
Grognard.
So we don't do line of sight, we don't do 3/4 cover. None of that applies to us. When my players want to cast a spell, I let them know if somebody's within range.
Cool.
And that's it. So this person desperately wanted to like flex his everyone does, his character's capabilities in combat, and was
Yeah.
just lost because the terminology was so different from what he was used to, that he started losing a mental image. And we're blind, so I don't technically use like battle maps. I do use like world maps or regional maps or whatever, but because only one of my players is fully blind, and they actually have a physical copy that's burned into leather, which is how that all happened with me burning maps into leather years ago. So they had something of a reversed braille version of our map. But that's it. Like, because we don't need it. And this person was so frustrated. And at that point, we just kind of realized, like, maybe we shouldn't be playing with people that. This would be like the fourth or fifth time that we had somebody at our table who just started getting really frustrated with asking me for visual cues. That I'm like,
What?
oh, well, that's irrelevant.
Yeah, there's part of me that really does feel some sympathy for somebody unexpectedly feeling so disempowered.
Yes.
Feeling so disempowered when they exist in a world that they can take for granted.
Yes.
And I sympathize with that. And at the same time, that ain't your cross to bear.
Right. Like, I explain to everybody who's ever at my table, especially if they don't have the same disabilities as me and my other players, like, we have a different language. We have a different way of describing things. Like, another thing is I roll the dice for everybody. We all started playing together because years and years and years ago, we slowly accumulated to the group that we are now because we had such a hard time finding a group that we could play in. There's not a ton of blind or deaf people that play D&D. So we slowly found each other and then started playing together and still tried to bring other people in. But when we did, unfortunately, we had, especially at one point, we had a very enthusiastic player at the table, lack of a better word, that would
Love the
cheer.
diplomacy.
Yeah. Well, because I understand in a normal sided game, yeah, you cheer or like, oh, when somebody rolls a 20 or a 1.
Yeah.
But when you're at a table of blind people, you cheering or booing or making noises before we get to know what's on our die just rips our enthusiasm out from under us.
Yeah, no, I totally would have been guilty of that. Wow,
Right.
thank you.
Most people are, which is why I was like, enthusiasm, like, we totally understand, but then it just kind of steals our thunder.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So everyone knowing what you roll before you do is super frustrating.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
See, I'm learning so much.
Right. So we started, so I started to take that factor off. Plus, as rules changed and everything else, a lot of websites are not compatible or not accessibility friendly. They're not compatible with our readers, getting new modules or supplements, hoping that the PDF fucking works for their reader. It just started getting to the point of like, it was anyone's guess if we could play any supplement or module. So I said, well, we don't have to worry about that. I am the forever GM in this particular game. I'm the one who has the most sight. I still have a reader that I know works with most of the PDFs and stuff that I get. I'll be the one to run them. And I'll use like D&D Beyond, which I do love, to roll everyone's dice so I can keep, tabs on everyone's sheet without going crazy. And I will just roll for everybody. And the great thing is that it took I no longer tell them what they roll. Like, they can look later on if they want.
Mhm.
And obviously, yeah, the word look, because again, we understand metaphor. I mean, like, their reader can tell them. People. Before someone's like, you said look. I'm like, fucking whatever.
Well, it's that God, I get that.
Right.
There's just language that if we listen, we can.
Yes.
It's picking our battles. Like, the ableist language is so inundated into our day-to-day
Yes.
existence, and God bless my friends, and actually some of our mutual friends, who are so diligent and so good at removing all shreds of ableist language from their plate. And you know what? That is something we should aspire to do, and we should be better, try and be better day after day after day, to be as inclusive as possible. And also, we're gonna make mistakes. We are going to, and also, guess what? Some of us also have our preferences.
Right. Absolutely. If somebody turns around and says, look to me, I don't assume that they actually expect me to magically see. Like, I don't think that they're trying to cure me. So oddly enough, I think that they mean, hey, I'm talking to you. Unless they're actually holding up something, then I'm going to assume, like,
then there's a bit of a problem there. Yes.
Right. Just a tad. You need to be within 4 to 5 feet of me for me to even tell that that blob in your hand is something. So that's fine. But I mean, yeah. But we use the same English everyone else does. Well, okay, one of us doesn't. That's not their first language, but that's not the point. We do. So we understand that the word look and see and everything else, it doesn't actually mean the physical looking at something with our eyes. But yeah, so my players can go have their reader read the numbers to them if they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
We also keep those for statistic reasons because we just have a lot of fun with those numbers. But I just tell them the actions that happen. And not only does this kind of like really keep us in the immersive storytelling mode that we love so much, because believe it or not, we're all theater kids, or I am specifically theater adjacent. I know, right? Shocker, right?
I'm shocked.
Who knew? Bunch of kids. Although the last time a short time ago when I said that to somebody, they're like, really? And I was like, yeah. I was like, ha ha, get it, tabletop, we're theater adjacent. And they're like, no, I'm just kind of surprised that blind people would be in theater.
Oh, sweet God.
By the way, listeners, don't what the hell? Don't say that.
What?
No, for some reason.
I was like, sweet mother of God?
No.
Oh, okay. God, I offended.
Right, no. I went to say, listeners, don't say that. And for some reason I went, done.
Dun, 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 dun,
dun, dun, dun. And I was like, done? No, I'm done with it. No. Yeah, don't. Listen, even if you are surprised, here's a hint. Don't say it. Just don't say it. And if we notice that you have a surprised look on your face or a perplexed one, and we ask why, please still don't say it. I can't tell you. I understand I may be the only partially blind person or blind at all person that you come in contact with, but the level of ignorance that some of y'all display to me on a regular basis that you have never, ever remotely thought or watched a movie about or a documentary or read a pamphlet, for that matter, on being visually impaired and or blind is astounding. please don't.
Well, and more so than that, it's coming at the expense of something else. One of the examples I often cite when I talk to people about basically a servant leadership perspective on things, and the idea of treat your people well, and they will treat you well.
Yes.
There is a company in Seattle that has existed for 65 years now, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a burger chain. It's a fast food burger chain. And if you ever come to Seattle and someone says, I'm gonna go eat a bag of dicks, this is what they're probably referring to. I don't know, Seattle's pretty gay. But
I mean, yeah.
This is Dick's Drive-In. And if you go to Dick's Drive-In and you order the Dick's Deluxe, which is this is like our version of In-N-Out, except you can't make any substitutions. And the Dick's Deluxe is $5.30. Okay.
You can get Dick for $5 somewhere?
Oh, you can get Dick for cheaper than that.
Wow, that is amazing.
No, you can. A plain hamburger is $2.55, or excuse me, $2.45. You can get Dick for under $2.50.
That's fucking amazing.
Now, if you want fries, that's extra. But
of course.
So a Dick's Deluxe is their flagship hamburger, and it sells it's the most expensive thing on their menu, and it's $5.30. Now, I want to contrast that with the fact that their employment policies are this: their burger slingers start at $20 an hour.
Good.
They make up to $25 an hour. Also, all of their employees get medical and dental. It is 100% employer paid. Children are covered at 75%, and spouses at 50%. They offer child care assistance to their employees, $28,000 scholarships, employee assistance programs, transport car, for public transportation in the Seattle area, 401k, raises and bonuses, and you get paid for community services. This is a fast food restaurant that charges no more than $5.30 per burger. If people want to tell me that it can't be done to treat employees with respect and decency and still be sustainable, Dick's has been around for 65 years.
Dick's will prove you wrong.
And if we want to get into the idea, is $25 an hour a livable wage in Seattle? It is not. But that is a different issue. That is a very different issue. But the fact is that they're offering they're offering medical and dental and and scholarship, and they like to promote from within. And it boggles the mind how many people say this is not doable. No, it's not doable if your whole job and your whole idea is to maximize short-term profits at any expense.
Yes.
Including the human expense. But if you want a sustainable company, there's a lot of evidence out there to say, here's how you can do it. And I'm excited to be able to give that a try and hopefully help people advance their careers in the process.
Oh yeah, I'm one of the reasons I am doing this podcast and why I immediately set up a Patreon is because my hope is, so not only do I want to talk to veterans of our community, but I want to bring in new artists, people that are virtually unknown or that are up and coming, and I would love to be able to earn enough that I would be able to put subscribe to their Patreons as well, and put money back into the community, because again, I can't pay it back, so I want to pay it forward as much as possible.
Yeah.
I have this great platform, and the hilarious thing is I can't show a lot of the art that I do, so a lot of times it looks like I'm not doing anything.
NDA.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right, I need to do something that I can, like, hey, look, I'm putting out something that I can share without me trying to fit in another project. on my quote unquote off time, because let me tell you, Baldur's Gate 3 is my newest obsession and I need time to play. I can't be drawing maps on top of maps when I've got Baldur's Gate 3 to play. The fuck?
Okay, here's the deal with Baldur's Gate 3, all right.
Okay.
I was given a copy very generously by our mutual friend Tanya, because I'm technically part of her stream team, and she was given promotional copies by Larian. Thank you, Larian,
Nice.
for that kindness. I have yet to play it. because oh my god, I had a book deadline.
Yeah, I
And
know.
I had a book deadline, and also it turns out I ran out of space on my hard drive,
Oh,
and I had to order a new hard drive, but my computer's so old that the hard drives I got weren't compatible, which means I need to get a new computer.
oh no. See now, I am so thankful that I have a long history of working with and possibly large files on computers. It's so funny. I have a fantastic computer to begin with, as well as a solid state drive, and 3 external, couple of terabyte drives that house all of my art. Also, in case anything ever happens, I can grab those and run and not worry about losing all of my artwork. And thank you, Backblaze, for backing up my computer all the time. Great idea to work with. Anytime I get a new computer, I can just download my previous files and I don't lose a fucking thing. Also, they don't sponsor me, but they should. But you know who does sponsor me is Legend Keeper. And I don't have a spiel for them yet,
I was
but
like,
I will
who's
soon.
Legend Keeper? It sounds like this is a map thing, isn't it?
No. Actually, you would probably love Legend Keeper. You'll get lost for a little bit.
Hey, what's up, world building app?
Yes.
Okay. I've used some others in the past, and I found the learning curve to be so steep.
Let me explain how I came across Legend Keeper and why they are now a full sponsor of this show. So, my DM wanted to play a game in which we were actually playing in Wildmount, and to set everything up so we could see the maps and blah blah blah, and also so it was compatible with my reader. He introduced me to Legend Keeper, and I was like, "Oh, this is great!" And then I was tinkering with it, and it is so simple. It is as simple as using a Word document.
Really?
Yes. And you can make it complex to whatever degree you want from there. There are templates that other people build that you just literally copy and paste into your own campaign and fill out the information, so you don't have to worry about knowing how to code anything or how to write it or even HTML. Literally, it's like using a Word document. The maps are interactive. You can draw pins on it. There's automatic linking to things when you start typing out. Oh yeah, it is so much fun. You can again make the world building as complex as you want. You can make timelines, calendars, link to everything, pictures. Oh, it is so much fun and so manageable.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Can I mean, like, if I pay for, this is not a commercial, this is legitimate interest, folks.
Oh yeah.
This is starting to sound like an 80s infomercial of
It
like,
does, and I don't mean it like that, but I literally have done this I've done this every single podcast. Episode.
If I wanted to share my world with my players, can I do that?
Yes, you can.
What? Oh my goodness.
And to whatever degree you want. You can make them editors of individual pages. You can make it so they just see it.
Oh, that's freaking cool.
Oh, and even better, they have I'm so excited. Can you tell? I'm ridiculously excited.
I'm looking at the features of this right now, and I'm getting excited because, oh my god.
They have secrets.
I don't use most pre-built modules because of my working memory and processing speed issues.
Yes.
I can't both run the game and read content at the same time. So I've gotten very good at just doing things on the fly with a little bit of information.
What I love is there's three functions that they have that I absolutely love as the way that I run games. And the first one is that there's a thing called secrets. And on any page, you can add a secret that only the DM or only the admin can read.
What?
Yeah. So even if someone else has the ability to see it, they can't see the secrets.
Oh my God. And I can upload up to 100 megabyte map.
Yes.
Oh, this is so cool.
And let me tell you, your pins, okay? Your pins can be fully detailed. You can change the icons, change the names. The pins can link to specific articles.
I'm so into this.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I am so into this.
Yay.
Oh, I'm gonna sign up for this. I think my players are gonna go ballistic over this.
I love it. I'm actually working on building things for that I use in my own games and everything, put them in it, but also you can share it publicly. So like, let's say that you're building a world that, I don't know, you're writing a novel for, or that you're playing in your campaign, or you're streaming and it's a homebrewed world.
Great for APs.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Cool.
Invite other people to just read over your world. My players are just chomping at the bit to do. So in the world that we play in, we have three major like libraries that are collect information. My players are currently on a knowledge quest at this moment, trying to solve a particular riddle, issue, whatever you want to call it. So they're accumulating the books. Now, I, of course, have the best note taker in all the world as one of my players. They have kept notes over every single book title and a short description on everything they've ever read over all of our campaigns, because we play in the same world, that we want to transfer over into a full functioning library. So I get to transfer all of the books that I have, and then I just click a button and they'll be able to see the new book as they come across it in the library.
You may have sold me on this.
Right? How fucking fun is that?
Oh, this is amazing.
Oh yeah, I love it. On a side note,
super into it.
We are making a, I'm asking everyone if, it doesn't have to be right now because everyone's got, time constraints going on, but I am asking everyone who comes on the podcast if they would like to contribute to the world that we're going to be building, specifically on Legend Keeper. It could be something as simple as renaming an establishment after whatever you want, your favorite character, you for that matter, a self-insert character. You could, you could develop an entire town, an entire city. If you want a continent, I'll draw the map for it. You're like, yeah.
I think I may want to contribute the favoritist location from my homebrew.
Perfect.
And that is the kingdom of
Well, here's the great thing. If you put the kingdom of on Legend Keeper, and I have the ability to see it, I can copy it to my Legend Keeper, and you don't have to do a thing.
Oh my God, I'm totally going to do that. And to people who may be listening to this and going, what the hell was that? Let me tell you how that happened. I used to run, I don't do this directly anymore. I teach people how to do this, but I used to run therapeutically applied role-playing groups and social skills role-playing groups for folks. And I largely had to improvise things on the fly with the teenagers I worked with. And at one point, I hadn't thought about the name for the kingdom we were in, and somebody asked a very reasonable question: what is the name of the kingdom we were in? And I looked at them just with absolute seriousness and just said, it's the kingdom of... And they were like, what did you say? And at that point, I can't go back on it. I'm like, I said what I said.
Right.
And the rest of the kids are like, you're rolling with this, are you? And I said, yes, I am. I stand by it. How? And they said, how is that spelled? And I said, a lot of consonants, a lot of H's and R's and G's, and F's. Who runs the kingdom of... I said, that's King Bob. And they went with it. And what really quickly happened is that King Bob morphed into some weird amalgamation of the short King of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland, the Disney version, and William J. Lepetamain from Blazing Saddles. And
which we won't repeat any of his lines here.
It's the general vibe that he is completely clueless and whimsical in his demands, and because he has absolute authority, people go through with the demands. And at this point, the kingdom has been renamed so many times, the repainting of the signs for the kingdom name is a running joke.
That's like, I have a whole village of Kenku, whose all their names and everything are sounds. So
awesome.
Like my character was Tick Tick Tick, because she was an artificer. Jesus, artificer. I can say the word. I leave this stuff in. People can know I stumble over words. It fucking happens. Anyhow, artificer. And because of it, that's the sound she makes when she's making things. So tick, tick, tick.
Oh my God, I love it.
Right. So, all of them have these sounds of like what they do. And it's so hilarious because a lot of the things that my Kenkus repeat are sounds. Because if you're in a village of Kenkus and they only repeat what each other hears, well, then they're just hearing everybody working and not really talking. So, a lot of the things that she repeated, or one of my characters repeated, was literally just new things, or she would just make noises when describing things. So, if she was describing somebody being coming on a horse, coming through the village or whatever on a horse, she would make the sounds of a horse clopping. And instead of and that was her way of explaining. And then she would as in the person's talking. And she would just repeat these things. And it took,
oh my God, I love it.
It took one of my friends quite a bit to grasp what was going on, but it was so funny.
God, I love this so much.
Yeah. Oh. So that Kenku village is actually going to be in the world that we're building as well, because I can't not, and I just love it because I will be adding this to the world that I also play in with my players. And they're listening because they listen to my podcast hoping to get clues on our game. But they already know about this one because they asked for it by request when I told them about it. So they're dying to go to the Kenku village of sound.
This is so cool.
So, before we end this, I ask everybody, what would they like to manifest in the universe? What would they like to see happen for themselves? Because you never know who's listening. Who would you want to work with? What would you like to do? What projects would you like to see come to your desk, your email, your whatever, in hopefully the near future?
I would love to do more video writing and on-camera hosting for mental health information. We've done a little bit of that at Take This, but right now, like a lot of nonprofits, we are small and we are constantly struggling for funding, and that often takes priority. The urgent stuff takes priority over the stuff that's more long term. And as I said before, I just want to get good mental health information out there to people for free. And I am a absolute ham on camera, and I know I can be entertaining, especially looking at this last one we did. Oh my God, there are some jokes that just work. And I would love to work with folks to make that happen, to get good information out there to people for free. I would love to work with you. I'd love to help write it. I would love to be the performer for that because, again, I am an absolute ham. I am
You
basically
almost became an actor.
I'm basically a walking cartoon character. I like to joke that I learned to socialize because of Jim Carrey, Buster Keaton, Mel Brooks, Abbott and Costello, and Bugs Bunny.
I mean, yeah, I was raised by a wild pack of drag queens, so that's my socializing.
So yeah, I that's what I would love to do. I would, if you have a platform, if you have a production studio and you've thought about doing mental health stuff for your community, whether it's, interstitials or it's just little segments or it's more long form stuff, reach out.